When irritability becomes a daily companion and mood swings arrive without reason, it is often dismissed as stress or personality, but beneath that surface volatility lies a deeper biological warning. Unexplained anger, impatience, or emotional overreactions are not just psychological quirks. They are the brain's distress signals, often pointing to strain in the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for emotional regulation, decision-making, and impulse control. When this area of the brain becomes overworked or undernourished, its ability to calm the emotional centers, especially the amygdala, begins to falter. This is not a minor imbalance. It is a slow, destructive process that, if ignored, can escalate into chronic anxiety, depressive patterns, or even cognitive rigidity where emotional overdrive replaces rational thought. The modern brain is under relentless assault. Sleep deprivation, constant digital stimulation, poor diet, and chronic stress all converge on the same neural battleground, the prefrontal cortex. Every time you check your phone for the 100th time, rush through meals, or push through exhaustion, you flood your body with stress hormones that erode this region's delicate circuitry. Cortisol, the main stress hormone, acts like acid on the prefrontal cortex. Prolonged exposure weakens synaptic connections and enlarges the amygdala, making emotional outbursts more likely. Over months or years, this biochemical erosion leads to what many people describe as being on edge all the time. The smallest inconveniences trigger disproportionate anger, empathy, and patience evaporate. This isn't just burnout, it's brain wear. The warning signs may start subtly. A short temper that flares easily. A feeling that every minor frustration is personal. Periods of inexplicable sadness followed by irritability. The loss of interest in things once calming. These shifts are not random. They signal that the brain's emotional circuits are being hijacked by stress chemistry. When neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine become imbalanced, the ability to sustain emotional stability weakens. The mind swings between fatigue and agitation, while concentration, motivation, and self-control deteriorate. People often misinterpret this as poor willpower, but in truth, it's neurochemical exhaustion, the emotional equivalent of a frayed electrical wire sparking under pressure. Unchecked, this pattern grows dangerous. The prefrontal cortex, once capable of regulating emotion and maintaining perspective, becomes progressively less active, while the limbic system, our primal emotional core, takes over. The result is impulsivity, poor judgment, and unpredictable reactions. Relationships suffer, productivity declines, and the individual begins to feel detached from themselves, as though living in a constant low-grade storm. This is not just an emotional issue. It is structural brain deterioration driven by inflammation and oxidative stress. Studies show that chronic irritability and emotional instability correlate with measurable shrinkage in the prefrontal cortex, the same region that thins with age and neurodegenerative disease. In other words, unmanaged emotional stress doesn't just make life harder, it accelerates cognitive aging. The biochemical roots of these mood swings are often dietary as well. The modern diet, deficient in essential fatty acids, deprives neurons of the materials they need to communicate smoothly. Omega-3 fatty acids, found in flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, and fatty fish like salmon, are fundamental to the fluidity of neuronal membranes. Without them, neurotransmitters struggle to move across synapses, leading to erratic signaling that manifests as emotional turbulence. When the brain's chemistry falters, even minor stress can ignite disproportionate responses. Reintroducing omega-3 rich foods regularly can help stabilize these pathways, reduce inflammation, and restore a more balanced emotional baseline. Yet, because the damage is cumulative, improvements require consistency over weeks or months, not days. There is also a more insidious risk that accompanies chronic mood instability. Neural fatigue becomes normalized. People begin to accept irritability as part of their personality, or attribute emotional volatility to external circumstances rather than internal depletion. Over time, this denial allows stress chemistry to harden into habit. The brain learns to live in overdrive, mistaking tension for alertness. Sleep becomes lighter, attention more scattered, and emotional resilience steadily erodes. It is a vicious cycle. The less control you feel, the more cortisol floods the system, and the weaker the brain's regulatory mechanisms become. Without intervention, This state can transition into chronic mood disorders characterized by persistent irritability, apathy, or emotional numbness. One of the gravest dangers of this condition is its subtlety. Unlike obvious cognitive decline, mood dysregulation hides in plain sight, woven into daily life and easily rationalized. But every day spent in emotional instability taxes the nervous system further. The cardiovascular system also suffers, as frequent anger and stress spikes increase blood pressure and inflammatory markers. The immune system weakens, sleep quality collapses, and the risk of metabolic diseases rises. Emotional imbalance is not confined to the mind. It ripples through every organ, turning what begins as irritability into a systemic health threat. Reversing this state requires more than occasional relaxation techniques. It demands structural changes to how one lives. Diet must be treated as brain therapy. Regular inclusion of omega-3 sources, colorful vegetables, and magnesium-rich foods stabilizes neurotransmission and calms inflammation. Processed foods, sugary snacks, and excessive caffeine must be reduced, as they aggravate cortisol spikes and glucose crashes that fuel irritability. Hydration, often overlooked, is essential, as even mild dehydration can worsen mood and concentration. However, food is only part of the equation. Emotional regulation must be rebuilt through deliberate mental practice. Mindfulness and meditation are not abstract wellness trends. They are neurological training, proven to strengthen prefrontal circuits and calm hyperactive emotional centers. Even a few minutes of daily mindfulness, where attention is anchored to breathing or body awareness, can reduce stress hormones and restore clarity. Journaling can also help release suppressed emotion, translating chaos into coherent thought and giving the prefrontal cortex a structured way to reassert control. Consistency is vital. These are not quick fixes but acts of neural rehabilitation. Yet perhaps the most important and most difficult step is to acknowledge the severity of chronic irritability. It is not a harmless mood issue but a sign of internal overload that, if neglected, can shape long-term brain health. People who remain in this state for years often experience earlier onset of memory problems, reduced emotional intelligence, and even impaired decision-making capacity. The cost is subtle but immense, the erosion of one's ability to respond to life with calm and perspective. The brain cannot thrive under constant volatility. Each episode of uncontrolled irritation leaves a biochemical scar, reinforcing pathways of reactivity and stress. But the human nervous system remains remarkably adaptable. With patience, proper nutrition, consistent mental training, and real rest, the brain can recover its balance. The prefrontal cortex can regain strength, emotional storms can quiet, and clarity can return. The warning is urgent, but it is also an opportunity. Ignoring mood swings may let the damage deepen. Addressing them early can prevent years of unnecessary suffering. The brain remembers every storm, but it also remembers recovery if we give it the chance.